this ancient pagan temple, the Serapeum, in Alexandria, Egypt, members of the Serapis cult were forced to secretly worship statues of their gods and goddesses in dark tunnels deep beneath the earth. On the shelves of these caves laid religious texts, scrolls, and papyri of their cult, hidden away for safekeeping.
The Christians allegedly burned the books which had been moved out of the library into the Serapeum, the sanctuary. They burned all the books there.
You know, that was the greatest collection of human wisdom on the planet at the time. And the entire thing was put to the torch because it was considered heresy. An encyclical went out from Rome saying that all of these texts must be destroyed, the Gnostic Gospels. We're only going to have these four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All the rest are heretical.
By 476 AD, the Roman Empire had fallen, but Orthodox Christianity flourished. Constantine's insistence on the literal Jesus Christ was the law.
Some suspect that it was done deliberately as a kind of trick. Others believe it just happened because it was easier, that the ordinary people were able to accept a literal view of stories that were very familiar.
But even as late as the 5th century, Christians had to be told by the Pope to stop the practice of worshiping the sun on the front step of St. Peter's in Rome.
Christliness was not something that just dawned in the year one of the coming era.
Beneath the epicenter of Christianity, the Vatican, under St. Peter's Basilica, is a ceiling mosaic dating back to the 3rd or 4th century that some believe clearly demonstrates the merging of pagan and Christian beliefs.
There's a picture of Christ sitting in a chariot, sun god, with wings and everything, right underneath St. Peter's Basilica itself. In fact, in the catacombs of Rome, there are many wrapped figures of mummies which they can't tell are supposed to be baby Jesus or baby Horus. And in many cases, they have a sun disk right on them.
But the idea that Christianity took its stories from Egyptian mythology is too far-fetched for most mainstream Christian scholars.
The fact of the existence of Jesus is one of the surest historical facts of anything in antiquity.
The notion of Jesus Christ stemming from paganism is absurd, according to leading Christian theologians. They claim Harpur is misreading Egyptian mythology and ignoring the evidence. Tom Harpur is convinced of a link between the Egyptian pagan god Horus and Jesus Christ. His is not a literal view of Jesus, but a metaphorical one.
I think he's made a mistake of buying into views that really no historians that I'm aware of would accept as really credible. Tom's book calls for a total re-examination of how Christianity got started. So I read it and said, you know, does he make some good points? And I decided he didn't.
While Tom Harpur is not alone in his beliefs, some of the world's most respected religious scholars feel that his theory on the origins of Christianity is deeply flawed. They claim that no logical link can be made between ancient Egyptian beliefs and Christianity.
There are a few gods that die and come back to life, in some of the ancient religions, but there really isn't anything like that in Egyptian religion at all. A lot of this stuff is just absolutely made up, or the historical images really have no connection.
Beyond sort of general parallels, they aren't specific kinds of parallels. Because they sound somewhat similar, they must be similar, and therefore Christianity derives from this. Well, the argument just simply isn't there. It's not necessarily a coherent view of what Egyptian religion was. It's very complex, extends over thousands of years, and there isn't a sort of way to find an actual summary of it.
Within the walls of the old city of Jerusalem, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was built by Emperor Constantine over the site of a pagan temple. In 326 AD, he decreed that this was the exact location where Jesus Christ died and was later resurrected. Millions of Christian pilgrims accept his words as absolute fact.
Christianity is hinged on the real Jesus Christ dying and being resurrected. And I think the evidence is very, very clear. That's exactly what happened.
Known as the holiest Christian site in the world, visitors mourn his death at the very spot they believe his body was washed by his disciples. For the millions who visit each year, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is absolute proof of the existence of Jesus Christ.
The evidence is incontrovertible that Jesus existed historically. Jesus of Nazareth was a person who lived and walked the dusty roads of Palestine and was crucified under Pontius Pilate.
The rock formation beneath the church closely matches the description of the resurrection site in the New Testament. It is this kind of evidence that for some confirms the existence of Jesus Christ.
You've got 4 Gospels that are independent witnesses. All of them were written before the end of the 1st century. That's not really debated by scholars.
No one really knows who wrote the Gospels, although they were attributed to disciples Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But they remain the heart of Christian theology.
You have different gospel accounts, but they agree on the core of a human being, Jesus Christ. And then there is external evidence in, for example, Roman historians and other places that cite and accept that there was this figure.
External evidence in the form of several passages of ancient historical text that refer to a Christ-like figure. But others aren't so sure and believe many of these texts are ambiguous or outright forgeries. The greatest suspicion is cast on the work of Flavius Josephus, a respected 1st century historian whose writings contain references to Jesus.
The one passage in Josephus, which on the face of it really does sound like a very strong piece of evidence for the existence of this man, because here's a Jewish historian who gives us some real interesting insights into this figure Jesus, until you critically analyze it and very quickly realize that it turns out to be a very, very crude forgery.
Many scholars claim that in the